Hello, everyone. This is our third Meet the Candidate Open Forum, and today we are meeting the 4 candidates that are running for VP for at large. I knew it would come to me. We usually have 2 at-larges voted in every term, and that is why we have 4 candidates to choose from. So this is going to be a really full session. I'm just going to go around and let them all introduce themselves, tell you a little about where they're from, since we are a global community that's of interest to folks, and where you're currently working, if that's different, as well as what area of HCI you're in. And if you'd like, you could say just a quick moment about why you're interested in running for VP at large. I'm just going to go in order. So Susan Dray, you are first in my line.
Oh my. Well, I'm Susan Dray, and I've had the honor and privilege to be part of SIGCHI since its very beginning. And as a result, I have had a lot of opportunity to see a huge variety of things that SIGCHI has done, some things we haven't done. I am in Minneapolis. I'm currently retired. Well, retired, which means that I'm not working for money, basically. That's basically it. Because I joined SIGCHI, well, because I was there at the beginning, I don't have a degree in computer science, unlike probably most of you. My degree is in psychology. And let's see, what were the other questions you asked? I can't remember what you asked.
Let's see, area of like, what did you do while you were working?
Thank you very much. This comes partly from being the senior member here. I worked in industry for about 10 years before going out on my own as a consultant, as one of the very first consultants. And we had lots and lots of fun. My husband and I worked together for part of that time. We worked in 28 countries doing research for clients, mostly American-based, but not entirely. We did have international clients. And most of what we did was helping our clients to deeply, deeply understand their users. And sometimes that meant that the product concept they had was not really very good. So we did kill some bad products, shall we say. Much of what we did was ethnographic. So we spent lots and lots of time in people's homes and public spaces throughout the world, including, slums in India and places in rural China and on and on. I'm interested in this position. I've had this position once before. Actually, maybe more than once before. I've basically worked with almost every SIGCHI function and every SIGCHI EC in some capacity. And I'm very interested in kind of leveraging that history, leveraging that experience, leveraging those connections with people around the world to help SIGCHI continue to grow in the kind of ways that we've been focusing on, especially in the most recent EC, towards a more global, a more inclusive and diverse organization and community, and also to help bring some people in who aren't necessarily part of that community right now, either from geographically, increasing the number of people in, say, Africa or Latin America or Asia, places where we traditionally haven't been as strong, but also bringing in more practitioners, because I'm a firm believer that we're an applied field and we need to have our practitioner brothers and sisters as well as our academics. And I've always straddled that line sort of between those two. So I think that's an important piece. So that's sort of me for you.
Sounds great, Susan. Thanks for kicking us off here. Pejman, you are the next one in my line here.
Cool. Thank you, Helena. Thank you all. Yeah, thanks again for this opportunity. My name is Pejman Mirza-Babaei. I'm a professor at Ontario Tech University, which is near Toronto in Canada. In terms of my background, I was born and raised in Tehran, Iran. I did my undergrad education there, and then I moved to the UK to do my postgraduate. So I did my master and PhD at University of Sussex in Brighton, and then I got a job in Canada, and I moved or immigrated to Canada more than 10 years ago and been working there at Ontario Tech University since. My research or my area is in games, so HCI and games. Most of my work is in collaboration with game companies. So my research is more on like an applied side. So I do work with mostly on commercial games and using HCI or user research method to help developer improve their products. In terms of this role, so I had the, I guess, privilege to be on the EC, on the current EC, and I also did an interim role in the previous EC. So what I learned through those that almost all roles on the EC has a very specific duties that those who hold those positions need to address. VP at large is a very unique role that the candidates can propose their own initiatives or agenda. Obviously, that can iterate with this in discussion with other EC member, president, EVP, but it's an opportunity for candidates to propose their own initiatives. Given my experience within the community and as a researcher and somehow part-time practitioner, I see an opportunity for mentoring within SIGCHI community. So that's what I'm hoping, if I'm elected in this role, to establish a framework for mentoring. And it's what I mean by mentoring is quite a kind of a more inclusive version of that. So whether if we have volunteers organizing a conference, we should better support them and mentor them. Whether it's newcomers to the field, students needs better support, but also I would say senior member of our community, whether as mentor or as mentee. In the last few weeks, I spent some time in the UK talking to some of my mentor at this stage of my career. I was actually wondering, how do I plan for retirement? Like that may sound a bit silly, but I needed support. I needed understanding. So what I meant by mentoring is something that we can learn from each other and plan. So it doesn't matter if you're a professor or you are just started, you're probably gonna benefit from that mentor-mentee experience. So that's what I'm hoping to establish within SIGCHI. I know that there are some small initiatives within some conferences and within some local communities, but I'm hoping that the SIGCHI EC can have a program to better support mentoring. So that's for me to get us started. Thanks again.
Excellent. Thanks, Pejman. Ignacio, you are next in my line.
Hi, everyone. I fully agree with Pejman, so what I have to say will be very similar. So let me introduce myself first. I'm Ignacio Avellino. I'm originally from Uruguay, South America. I did an engineering degree back then. Then I moved to Germany and Italy for my master's, and then France for my PhD. Today, I'm a permanent researcher at the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS. And my work is at the intersection of HCI, CSCW, and health as an application domain, so specifically surgery. And I study situation action in the operating room. I love doing ethnographic work, to later build technologies that support surgeons in their work, especially communication, collaboration, both in collocated and in remote settings. So my motivation to be VP at large, I would say it comes from my personal experience growing up as a researcher. I've been member of SIGCHI since my master's studies, and I've always, took advantage of this community. So I think it's always good to give back as a reviewer, being involved in committees, and this is why I'm interested in being VP at large. But through these different roles, I've been constantly exposed to mentorship experiences that are just invaluable growing up as a researcher. So in the same line as Pejman, I think mentorship is very important. It has let me personally understand the field and help me make decisions that have been very impactful in my career and to remain motivated. So from these experiences, I've come to understand the value of mentorship. And I think today I believe in equitable access to mentorship because I see that not all of the community members have access to mentorship like I had. So in this position, I would like to work with the EC to strengthen mentorship towards early career researchers, responding to this growing need for support as we navigate this complex world of academia. And this can mean, for example, creating more infrastructure for those who are keen in investing time in mentorship, or to increase awareness of mentoring opportunities that already exist. I think mentorship can have many ripple effects. So if we take reviewing, for example, today we're facing a bit of a crisis when it comes to reviewing. We have more and more submission across our conferences, but the number of reviewers doesn't grow up, with those growing submissions. So I think mentorship can be part of a bigger plan to tackle some of this by, training more people on how to be good reviewers and increasing the pool of reviewers. If you consider service work, many early research careers are frightened by some roles. They think, oh, I could never be this or that. But I think with strong mentorship, you can realize that you're up to the challenge, and one day you can be a leader in the community. So, all in all, I think by tackling mentorship, we can have many positive impacts in different areas. I think that's all.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. All right, Dilrukshi, you are our fourth candidate. Please take the stage.
Thank you so much. I might be the least experienced candidate here. Well, I joined SIGCHI during my PhD. That was 2018. I'm based in Sri Lanka, Colombo, and I did my PhD here, master's here, and everything. But I did my postdoc in Tokyo, and now currently I came back to Sri Lanka. Started as a senior lecturer in University of Colombo. So I'm based in Sri Lanka, which is just tiny island under India. For many people who don't know where is Sri Lanka, that's an often question that I get. Okay, so where did I begin seeing SIGCHI? Actually, during my PhD, this part of the continent never knew about HCI. Luckily, I got attracted to a project done by Michael Bernstein. That time, it was a crowdsourcing project, and that was my first kind of experience how these top tier HCI conferences taking place. And I was so inspired, how computer science can bring such interaction perspective to design. So that was because I grew up in computer science, and this is kind of new to me. And so ever since, that was the seed. And then I determined myself that, okay, I see a lot of people who's doing HCI in other part of the world. So let's bring something here too. So after my graduation, while I was a PhD student, I established the Colombo SIGCHI chapter for the first time in Sri Lanka. And then we grew up a little bit more, and then we collaborated something with the region as well. So we have an alliance called HCI for South Asia, which has been kind of bringing continents together. For example, we have allies people from Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan. We work together most of the time. We submit workshops to CHI. So in a way, that what we try to do is that to kind of establish a strong HCI community in the world, so that we make a voice from this continent a lot. And recently, I think I secured a SIGCHI development fund, about 7,000 USD, and we ran a 3-day HCI workshop, summer school, bringing Neha, Michael, India, Aniruddha Joshi from India, and Nova from Bangladesh. And we had about 40 to 50 students coming from the region, actually India, Bangladesh, and it was kind of a really eye-opening for the students, undergraduates who kind of want to go in that area. I think the VP at large sounds very, the magnitude is so large, but the motivation for me actually that comes from what I can do from this region is enormous when I see the small events that we have done. So I think the more that we collaborated with the people who have never heard the SIGCHI before, from that perspective, there is a huge impact that I think I can make from, while living and working here for the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you. My computer is slowing down immensely, so if you lose me, keep going, okay? So I might just have to restart. It just might happen that way. So a few of you talked about this interesting role of at-large, and that's actually one of the first questions I want to ask you. If you look in the bylaws, it says that the VP at-large, the duties of this role will be decided by the executive committee. And I think oftentimes it's very unclear, like what is the point of the VP at large, but specifically that there are always new things that SIGCHI faces, new issues, as opposed to the standing jobs that need to be done. And sometimes that has to be figured out as to what are those pressing issues that we do need VP eyes on. So my question now for everybody is, how do you imagine working with whomever is in the new executive committee? We don't know who the new president, for instance, could be until the election's over. So how do you imagine working with that person to sort of determine what is the foci that needs, to be addressed, and how will you then work with the rest of the executive committee to sort of flesh that out and do that job for 3 years? I'm gonna just like Russian roulette it here at this point. Pejman. Can you please go first?
Yes, sure. I was just writing down some notes, so you caught me off guard, but that's okay. Very, very interesting question. One thing I should mention, there are usually 2 aspects to any EC roles. One is contributing to all the decision that the EC is making collectively. So as VP at large, you are one of the elected member, and you have a voice. It may be a slightly outside what you propose or what are the core initiatives you are working on, but nevertheless, it's a decision that the EC making. So in that aspect, I feel, given my background, I could contribute to those discussion, those decisions effectively. And the other aspect, as I mentioned, and according to the bylaw, there is usually a bit of flexibility in terms of what the VP at large would do. And I try to highlight that in my opening as well, that if I'm elected, then there would be a discussion, obviously, with the president, with the EVP, with the other EC member to identify areas that the EC wants to focus on. Usually, each EC has some priorities that they want to focus. However, I still feel mentorship in some form gonna be our priority, regardless of who is elected. Like I think Ignacio highlighted that very nicely, that it's about supporting our community, whether if you are a reviewer, whether if you are a conference organizer, whether if you are a student. I still feel that mentorship gonna be important aspect of the EC's responsibility. Having said that, I don't mind. I don't want to create a misunderstanding that the previous ECs didn't focus on mentorship. A lot of activities that all the ECs have done in the past is around community development and mentorship. However, this this role, what I'm imagining, would be a central point that work with other EC members. Let's say if we are looking at local event, that would be working with EC chapters. Most of our chapter currently operate in a local level. If we are looking at establishing maybe a framework for conferences, that would be to working with a VP for conferences. We can work with our community development, the way our funding is distributed. So I'm hoping that this VP at large focus on mentorship would have this oversight of all the activities that's happening in the EC, and then be involved in those discussions. Ideally, I'm thinking usually like setting up a committee, so the committee would advise, would create framework for mentorship to happen at a more strategic and I would say systematic level across SIGCHI. So to summarize, I would imagine working very closely with all EC members, and I think mentorship gonna be a priority, whether I'm gonna be elected or not. It's all ECs have been working toward this. My hope is to have it more centralized and focused. Thank you.
Thanks, Pejman. That's great. Ignacio, can you go next? Just to summarize the question, how do you imagine defining the role of at-large with whoever is on the next EC?
Right. So I really like how the current EC has been going back to the community all the time, asking, holding open sessions. So one of the ways to determine what are the priorities, I think, is working with the community, going back to them, and keep doing all of this, all of these ways of figuring it out with the community, but also being guided with facts and numbers. I think that's also very important. Finally, I think being open and learning, sometimes you have to work with something that you don't personally believe is the #1 priority, but you end up learning why that's important, and there's always a valuable lesson. So also being open to something that might not be my little baby that I want to put forward, but you have to work with the committee. Also, one of the things that I told myself, like if I get elected, there has to be something concrete that comes out at the end. And I think that's the hardest. So if we go back to the example of reviewing a mentorship, I mean, what does it look like exactly? There's discussions after the Milan summit. There's discussion in the CAI steering committee. There's all these ideas, but then figuring out exactly how it looks like, that's the hardest part. No one's gonna be, you cannot make everyone happy. So there's a lot of discussion that has to be done. Perhaps leading a committee, like Pejman said, trying things out. So I think this is the hardest. So working with the executive committee to get something done at the end. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Dilrukshi, you're next on the tiles all turned around, so you're next.
Yeah, sure.
How do you imagine working with the new EC to determine what will, be part of the role of the at-large VP?
Yeah, so as at the beginning, I said, like VP at large doesn't have a very, well-defined role. So that's one reason that I really like this position. That's why I applied for this one, because I'm kind of thinking, of course, I'm, looking forward to talk to the, elected members coming years, but several things in my mind, actually. One thing that I have been experiencing so far throughout my SIGCHI is that whenever I see a representation, for example, continent representation, diverse representation, I feel like I'm included. I'm really, feel so safe to ask questions, feel so safe to say something. So one thing that I really focus will be to give or like to be representing for people who have never been able to represent a voice. So how do we kind of tackle their unheard requirements, and then kind of if we can articulate a way of bringing that voices to the EC committee, then that would be my first ambition, or like that's what I'm really, really looking forward. And I think one way of doing that is to bring all community activities. Actually, mentorship would be one tiny part of it, as I see, but there's a broader level, things that we could do to make more inclusiveness to a kind of a central role to the SIGCHI committee. So I look forward to get more of ideas from the members, not just the members who have been vocal everywhere, but the members who have been shy to talk before and never thought, okay, there's a committee and my idea valued too. So I'm kind of thinking to bring people from all the corners and to bring to the table and see what's happened with a larger group. Yeah, that's the summary.
That's great. Thank you so much. Susan, you're the last one. Just how do you imagine working with the new EC to think about the scope of the at-large position?
Well, good question. Good answers, all of you. I guess the thing is, I've worked with many of the people who are currently up for election. Not everybody, but and so I think there's sort of several pieces. There's the kind of what you bring as your passion. There's what the EC brings as its passion. And then there are all the personal relationships and working together to find ways that are going to meet all of those, tick all of those boxes, as they say some places. And so it's a process of negotiation. It's a process of discernment and understanding. And as several of you've mentioned, it's understanding what the community wants and needs. And that's at all levels, not just, the senior loud people, but everyone, and in all regions. So I think it's an interesting and complex role, actually, which brings lots of opportunity to bring about good in the community. And so I think it's basically a process of negotiation, I guess, is more than anything.
Well, Susan, since we're on we have some questions in the chat. And the first one is from chat. Chat, do you want to voice this yourself?
Yep, can do. Hi, question for Susanna. So there are already many efforts from SIGCHI to promote awareness of SCI globally, and it has, like SIGCHI has done this for many years, and you are also one of the people who actually push these various efforts. From your perspective, what do you see as the primary barrier that keep us still needing to do these things, and how do you plan to address this barrier?
Fabulous question. And you're right. There have been efforts to try to build awareness both of HCI and of SIGCHI to bring together people who are focusing on both of these areas. Just most recently, for example, we had a summit in Africa this past year that brought together a whole bunch of people who we didn't know about before, which is amazing and wonderful. And I think that's kind of why we need to continue doing this. There needs to be increasing momentum. And we focused in different areas in different ECs. We started out, well, in the very beginning, just getting people from Europe involved was a big issue because SIGCHI was primarily North American in the very beginning. But we focused on Europe and brought more people in. And more recently, we focused in Asia and had the conference in Korea. And we focused on both South America and Africa during this current EC. I think the thing is that it's not a one and done thing. It requires ongoing working collaboratively with people in the region. It also requires us to put some money behind our efforts. So it's not all just, networking and mentoring. One of the things, I've focused on my whole career is trying to mentor people primarily in the these areas of the so-called global south, which is a horrible term for it, but anyway, there it is. And that's just awesome and wonderful. And it helps to build them up and then help them go on and mentor other folks. And that is one of the areas. So I think tying in some of the things that you guys have been saying about mentorship ties directly to how do we build and continue to build and increase the awareness of HCI globally. So I think it's complicated, but I think a lot of it has to do with time and relationships and money and focus, and not just allowing the things that people in the so-called global north think are important, but also including priorities from people around the whole world. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Chad, how about you ask your next set of questions?
All right, then with for Pejman and Ignacio. So you mentioned that you want to establish some sort of framework for SIGCHI mentorship that is like inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. Are you aware of any of the efforts that SIGCHI or part of SIGCHI or people in SIGCHI has already done? And if you are aware of these efforts, could you like give your analysis on what aspects that you think need to be improved among these efforts? If you are not aware of any, that is also fine. Maybe that is the problem, that we don't have efforts. Maybe Pejman first.
Happy to go first, but I already did two of them first. Ignacio, if you want to go first, I'm okay to go second.
As you wish. I can go first. I think you know the EC more in depth than me, so you will have more things to say. I'm not aware of. I mean, I know SIGCHI has been aware of this issue. There's been blog posts from the executive committee or Interactions magazine publications. In terms of concrete actions, I know Michael Mueller did some symposiums on early career researchers development, and then he did something more concrete that I wanted to look back with him, but I haven't done so yet. So I'm not aware of many more than these actions. I don't know, Pesha, I think you know more what the EC has been doing more concretely than me.
Sure. So there are, I would say, as I said earlier, mentorship is important topic. Not only the current EC, but the previous EC have had all initiatives to support mentorship. But maybe the reason we don't know about them is because they are kind of scattered around. So one thing I'm hoping to do is to bring them under one umbrella so we can better promote them and make sure that our community members are aware of them. In terms of specific examples, not from the EC, but for example, in the Kai Play community or conference that I usually attend, in the last couple of years, there were initiatives to run a mentorship program within the conference. And I participated in those initiatives. One thing I realized was that added extra volunteer workload to conference organizers who were already very busy organizing the conference, which meant they had to figure out a way to have people sign up to be mentors, figure out a way with no system to figure out, okay, how people who are interested sign up as the mentees. Then again, there is no system figuring out how they connect mentors to mentees, where these people would meet, like, is it within the conference? Is it outside the conference? Who's gonna set up a Zoom call? So there were, while the initiative was so exciting, many people wanted to participate, the organization of it meant overhead for already busy volunteers. So one area that I'm really hoping to be able to address is to create like a SIGCHI system, whether it might be through PCS or through other system that we already have, to make it possible for people to sign up as mentors and mentees, and then have some form of a matching system that reduce the load on a conference organizer, for example, that we could use. As I said, like one thing I want to do is to set up a mentorship committee. So maybe the people on the committee could support the matching of mentors and mentees and document these. We did something similar outside SIGCHI for the Game Developer Association, where we have a very clear framework in terms of, it's like a contract, but not a contract, it's like agreement, like what mentors can expect, what mentees can expect, what that relationship would look like. So having those, I would say, more formalized and more structured within SIGCHI could be, I think could be very, very useful. There are more examples, but I think we did, for the interest of time, I try not to take too much time, but that's what I'm basically hoping. And the KaiPlay example is just one of them.
Thank you.
I may bounce on what Pejman said. I agree with you. Like, so setting up something formal on PCS is something that I've been giving some thought to as well. But then trying this idea with different people, you know, everyone says what you just said. It's more effort. So why would I do it? But it doesn't have to be. You have to change the views because, like, I give reviews to my students, right? Although that's not very much encouraged because I'm their advisor. But then, like, I could give the same reviews to another student. I end up coaching them anyway, so it doesn't cost me more. It has to be, someone has to take care of my student, right? So it's what you said, the system of, you know, I give, you give, and then in the end, it's a zero-sum game, and then finding ways to actually make it less effortful. So I don't know how this can be implemented, but I believe there can be ways of reducing the effort in the end, right? So there's a bit of how we change people's views on this topic as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Shall I continue, Helena?
Please do.
Question for Dilrukshi. Like from what I understand from your summary of like what you wish to do as a VP at large is that you want to promote awareness of SCI in your region, and I meant your region as Sri Lanka and also maybe in Asia and maybe also in Global South and so on. It's different hierarchy of region. So, but there are also people working on this. There are SIGCHI chapter level at each local region. There will also be a new SIGCHI VP chapter. So if you want to push on this effort, how do you envision that your position as a VP at large will be in a unique place to contribute to this? Why don't you instead trying to apply or focus on being VP chapters instead, for example?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So far, if we kind of, step back and look what we have done through chapters is like, we have done summer schools, we have meetups, we have workshops. So all these things are being, carried out isolated, mostly chapter-wise. And of course, you and I know that in the region Asia committee, we try to bring some things together. So looking from the bird's eye point of view, I think what I want to see is that not just so to establish one of the framework that we can bring these together. So chapter chairs has been trying hard in the past, what I've seen, and if we can kind of bring kind of a guideline or a method that we can bring all these, not just from the regions, but also as a SIGCHI, level. One thing that I've seen is that awareness is going on different levels. One way of looking at is the curriculum. So SIGCHI can be one of the places that can recommend, or like can be a place where everybody can come and look at here are the recommended curriculum from each and every region, so that if you want to establish, so because ASEAN has computer science curriculum, but when we hear from the others, when there are regions that never heard of SCI before, and if they want to establish a course or if they want to do something, then there should be some place in the SIGCHI that they could go and get all this information. So chapters would not be able to directly do that, in my personal opinion. That maybe, I don't know. So far, I have not come across with that. So I could be the bridging catalyst who could work with the chapter chairs, who can bring all these events and say, for example, curriculums together, and then be the centralized place that everybody can reach.
Thank you.
Excellent questions. Anybody else on the call want to ask our candidates, one or all of them, a question? I already looked at the Slido and there's nothing there for our candidates, so we are good. Years of teaching have made me comfortable with quiet. Chat, you have a question you want to voice?
Yep. If there is nobody have a question, then I would like to chip in one more question for everyone. How do you envision, like, imagine that you are now a vice president of VP at large, and this is your last year on the duty. How do you envision that any effort that you have done will not evaporate away once the new SIGCHI EC come in? How do you envision the handing off of your knowledge and experience to the next generation of VP at large?
Throw it to somebody. Your choice.
Susan?
Oh, thank you. A great question, because continuity of programs and even just of ideas across ECs is never guaranteed, but it's really, so it's very important, I think, to involve as large a part of the community as possible. So it's not just a vice president at large program, but it's something that the whole community is engaged in and supported by the VP at large and others on the EC as well, because clearly we're talking about shared values here. And I think those shared values exist, pardon me, within the community at large. So I think the handoff also has to include some very specific things, like, for instance, making sure that stuff is documented. I'm currently associate chair for partnerships along with Keith. And one of the things that we're trying to do right now is document all the stuff that we've done, the things that we've learned. Not everything has been successful at all, but some of the things have. We've learned an awful lot about how to partner with different organizations. And I think that is sort of what we've learned there, and all the things that I've learned over time in the past are kind of the ways that we continue things forward by both documenting it, but also making sure that it's community effort. So hope that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's a big one. Who do you want to throw it to next, Chat?
Oh, maybe Dilrukshi?
Yeah, sure. I see this slightly different. So particularly VP at large, I'm not talking about any other position, which could be like, it could be iteratively doing the same thing. But here, VP at large sometimes, because the position, the duty is very open-minded for the newly elected members who thinks that they can drive. So people come to this position with maybe a slighter vision to say that I'm kind of keen to drive these, and I would be able to, convince or to bring a value proposition to the EC committee. Hey, this is what I was thinking, what's your perspective, and then getting that feedback, and then that will run a unique, I don't know, unique or something that we stopped or something that we couldn't run earlier. That could be an initiative that's running for the very first time, or it could be running more effectively than the earlier time. So, so in that perspective, it's not about like, you know, continuing from the previous people. So we are coming as a fresh people to think differently and bring something different or with the align of the SIGCHI goals. And then to move to the next position, or like, you know, if a next person, VP at large comes, they might have different agendas in the sense how they feel strong about leading in that position. Like, you know, you have to be comfortable in leading something that you are passionate about, right? So it's not something that a duty that you are assigned to do, but something that you propose. And I think I can, you know, do a better job in that sense. So so I see it's at a unique perspective, so that you don't much need to think about in terms of what you want to, you know, give to the next person to continue what you have done. Maybe the next person will come with a next perspective. So let's, in my opinion, I would like to keep that openness in the committee, you know, going on. So it's about, maybe you can share with the next person like what worked well, what did not work, and that perspective. But in terms of not on the ideas in the sense like, you know, you have to continue what I have built. It's not exactly like that. That's my personal opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe Ignacio next.
Sure. So how to ensure continuity? Well, you do a good job first. You create things that are systems that are working in place, not just ideas. You know, you go beyond the good idea and you try to leave something that is already working and making the value explicit. So understanding what is the value that you brought to the community and leaving this documented, as Susan was saying. So explaining to the community why this has worked. Could be metrics, you know, leaving traces of data. If we become a more global community, it means that we expanded to new frontiers. So this is something that can be shown with numbers, but at the same time, like this EC has been doing, talking with the community to explain why these things have worked through the open sessions and Ask Me Anything sessions. And then perhaps envision a future for the system you left in place, a potential roadmap so that people can pick up where you left off and then bend it according to their vision. And then make time once you're out, stay in touch with the new people, right? That's it.
Thank you. Pejman?
Oh, great question, Chad. So I agree with everything that everyone else has said. One thing I want to highlight in addition is that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big believer in committee work, not only because it helps the VP to have more support and more brain in decision, but also create a group of people who are aware of things that are happening. I've been doing that with my university role. For example, I was an associate dean for my faculty, and I created a committee that supported that and work on initiative after when my term was over. One of the committee members is leading those efforts. And the good thing is they already knew very well. Within SIGCHI, I did the same. When I was the interim VP for communication, we had a committee, but I kind of added new members, and it's super cool to see members of that committee currently holding VP Com role within EC. And I'm hoping the same happens with my current role as VP publication, because we have excellent people on the PUBs committee. And I'm really hoping the next VP PUBs would be from people who've been serving as committee members. So that's, again, not only help the VP in their responsibilities, but already know very well on how things been done and can have a very good starting point. That doesn't mean that the next VP should be selected from that group. It just means there are more people that are aware of what was done and then are willing to support the next VP. So I would be doing the same for the VP at large role, whether the next VP at large going to continue with the mentorship initiative, or the people who were on the committee are moving that initiative forward, whether in the AC role or other EC role, like that would be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good food for thoughts.
I think we have time for one more question, and I see Neha Kumar's hand up. So would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, Helena. So I've loved all of the answers. Thank you so much for all your contributions, and especially the last question that you asked, right, about continuity. I think is exactly how, like what Pejman said, is exactly how this role played out in some sense, because I was VP at large before I was president as well, and the people in the committee are now holding related roles. But I have a slightly different question, which is around, you know, the special thing, the unique thing about the VP at large is that you can really have a responsive role in the community. So you can respond to what's going on in the community, and you also have some room to change what you're doing, as opposed to, say, VP pubs or VP conferences, where you really cannot, right? You're stuck to a particular charge. And so what happens often enough in our community is that there are moments where we call them crises. We could call them maybe something nicer and gentler, but let's just go with crises for now. So we have these crises that emerge, and I think in those situations, very often they're not actually linked to particular roles, and so VPs at large could potentially come in to help out, to address what's going on, and I also see the opposite kind of argument, which is that, you know, you don't, you know, that they might have a different charge, and so you don't want them to kind of meddle. But the fact is that not all the roles that we need in our community are actually covered, right? Often people might be away, or they might be working on other things, or they might be just spent. So how would you, in say like the Kai in Hawaii situation, right, which came up, how would you respond to that? What do you think in your role as VP at large you could do to help the EC respond to the community? Nacho, let's go with you first.
Sure. So if we look at the example of Hawaii, I would do something very similar that you did in the town hall, which is to address the situation straight on. You know, be frank. These were the options. This is what we could only do so many things, and these were the pros and the cons, and we had to do something, and this is it. So being honest, addressing the issue, not going on the side. So I think, you know, to respond to the question of how would I do the things. Communicate a lot, keep the community well informed of, you know, how these processes happen. I wouldn't respond to Kai Meta and all of these blogs because it generates more fire, but I'd rather address, you know, you read all of these comments in Twitter and Kai Meta, etc. You take them in, and then you write something, you know, in the name of the executive committee that looks at what everyone has said, but in a more formal medium. Yeah.
Thank you. Pejman?
You picked a tricky example to talk about, but that's fine. So as you mentioned, crisis, if for the lack of better word, comes up. As I said earlier, as an EC member, and particularly as an elected EC member, I think your focus is not only on the initiative that you're working on, but contribute and support the EC in making those difficult decisions. So I would say, like in any situation, when the need arises, like to make yourself available, to participate openly and honestly in discussion, to be the voice of people, of the community, but also not forgetting that we are still SIG and officers of ACM, so we are also bound to policies and regulation and those. So how I would approach cases usually, whether it's Kai in Hawaii, whether something else, I try to first understand what are the policies, what are the regulations around that case. So I make a decision that's within the policies. So make sure that I understood those clearly. That may mean reading policies. That may also mean talking to people who are informed on those. In Kai in Hawaii example, that meant meeting with director of publication, reading all the POBs related issues that was subjected to discussion. Then the next step for me was to make sure the people who are making the decision are aware of these policies. So my POBs role was impacted there. So that meant talking to everyone on the EC and make sure we are all have the same understanding on those policy. And then obviously, as Ignacio also highlight, then listening to the community, listening to the needs, and then try to find a solution that works well in addressing the concerns as much as possible, while making sure that we are staying within our policy and our role. One term that I really like, usually I use, is like, what is our circle of influence? Like how many people we can, who are the people who we can influence, and then work from there. I hope it answered your question.
Yeah, sorry to pick a tricky example. I think I picked the one that I thought people would be familiar with, but yeah, I don't know if we have time, but I think it's fair to go with Susan and Dilrukshi as well, right? So Susan, you want to go next?
Sure. First and foremost, I think the VP at large, because of that flexible role, needs to play a role in helping the whole EC understand the issues from all perspectives. And the VP at large has the added benefit of being able to kind of go out and listen across communities in a way that someone like, say, VP Pubs isn't really isn't really able to do quite as easily. Although clearly all of us on the EC have a role in supporting, in figuring out what the right stance is, and listening and supporting whatever the decisions are that are made either at a president, executive vice president level, or et cetera. But often I think bringing those divergent perspectives and deeply understanding as much as possible what can be done to incorporate all of the perspectives. And I think actually Hawaii is a very good example of a way that between all of the different ways of communication, I think, as Ignacio said, there was an openness, there was directness of addressing the issue. And I think there was a kind of a solidarity around, within the community, I think a solidarity arose because of all of that. So I think the VP at large can play a role in helping to facilitate that and in supporting the people who have to make, who are communicating that, who have to make the hard decisions, et cetera.
Thank you, Susan. Dilrukshi?
Yeah, so I actually have, everybody kind of, I iterate the same things because I don't know any different ways of handling this, which SIGCHI handled really, to my personal view, they handled really nice. Because one thing that I would highlight is the communication, which was expected, because at some point people might think like, oh, why they're silent and they're not responding. So I think whenever we see a crisis, what's the issue? It's important to listen and then to identify who's and what are the groups which is making or like vulnerable making these voices and to understand and then to address directly, plus also kind of inform the rest of the group as well. There's a crisis as this, and we want everybody to contribute, and kind of bringing not isolated decisions, but collective decisions, very transparent with the alignment of policies. So I think so far I've seen it's happening. So if I were to do a bit more, I would go like VP at large would be, as Susan said, would be a voice that could be listening to the direct communities, plus bridging the EC community. So this is exactly the problem they mentioned. Have we, have we addressed that directly for them? Like not just like a outline of without a specific answer, but did we really reach them and kind of provided them the answers that they were looking for? So kind of bringing them the personalization could be one way of thinking, but overall it's happening. So I don't see much of difference so far. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you for that last question, Neha. And we are at the top of the hour, so I'm going to respect everybody's time, and we're going to end the session. For anybody who's watching this, we will in about a week and a half start having our second round of Meet the Candidate open forums. And if you are going to Kai, I believe Pejman and Ignacio are planning on being there in person. So if you want to follow up with them, you can either email them or try to find them over a coffee break. And Susan and Dilrukshi are available also over email, and probably, I believe by the end of the month, everybody's statements will be on the ACM website as well to read. So remember that you get to put in a vote for 2 candidates for VP at large. So I hope this was helpful for everybody to get to meet our candidates. Thank you everybody for being here. Whether or not it's early in the morning, middle of the day, late at night, we're all over right now. But thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much.